the future of his story. Namaste, welcome everyone. We are here for the first episode of a new adventure into the world of masculinity, and I'm very happy today and blessed to be joined by my dear brother. You will know him, you will see him, the one and only Dr. Joe Delaney Lightheart. Welcome, brother.
Martin, my boy, how are you? This is
Hi.
not coming up on my live stream. I don't know what. Oh, yes, it is. I'm sorry. I beg your
Are
pardon.
we good? We're
There it
on?
is.
Sweet. Welcome. Good to see you, brother.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Challenged and good and up and down and in and out, same as
Yeah,
ever.
exciting, challenging, interesting times.
It is. It is. And that's why we're here together. So this like digital whirlwind world that I've been in like since 2017, 2016. There's not many people that I've actually met in body, but you are one of them. Like we met in Glastonbury, I think maybe a couple of years ago.
Two
So
years ago.
yeah, we met in Glastonbury. Very intense place for me. Anytime I go there, there's always something magical or chaotic. But it was great to actually, see the whole body and know that you don't just exist from here up. It was good to get together, and yeah, really this kind of inspiration around this future of his story is to get together with brothers that have been on the path for some time. And, you know, we've been blessed to a degree in these groups and communities that we've been in that the feminine energy has been very strong, very prominent, and the majority. And I feel it's very important at this time for the masculine energy to step into this new way of being and stepping out and coming together again. So I really wanted to start this to get conversations going again between men and talking about the challenges that we face, but also how we see this new way of being. And thank you for coming along to be the first. And like always, we just go with the flow. We have this general theme, the future of his story. So I'm just going to throw it over to you to see what's in the maybe first, just in case there's somebody that doesn't know of you, share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll flow from there. Sound good?
Sounds great, Martin. Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to see you all, even though I can't. And my story really is one of born highly sensitive into a very strong Irish Roman Catholic family. Um, Conditioned from day one, probably even before day one, in the womb of my mum. Right, we can talk about that. We can talk about all sorts of things like fetal programming and all that sort of stuff. I want to talk about feminine toxicity as well, not to cause trouble, but just to try and explain how I see things. Really,
Yes.
because to me and probably to you, fear is an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence is shot through with it. I think that we're here to learn one thing, and that's to become fearless. And that's to overcome various challenges that come our way by learning to work from the power of the heart. I know I've got all serious straight. Um, I think my story was always sensitive. I was born with various conditions. I was 6 weeks premature, born with respiratory distress and scoliosis and pelvic abnormalities and stuff like that. And so consequently, I was basically attached to my mother's leg for 38 years of my life, right? And everything that she said and guided me into, right, I did. I didn't question anything. I just listened to my mum. And she was frightened for me. And really, she wouldn't let go of me to try and experience life by myself. But then, around about 12, 13, 14, 15 years of age, I discovered alcohol, right, which changed my life completely. It made me feel like the person that I wanted to be, and I got addicted to it. And in the course of addiction, rather than boring anybody with all the details, I lost my job. I was in the NHS. I had quite a high, prominent position in the NHS. I lost my job. I lost my wife and kids. I lost my liberty, I lost my driving license, and I lost my home, and I ended up homeless. And yeah, I lost everything, Martin, as you know. And then I made three really serious attempts to take my life, and it didn't work. So not only was a failure in life, but it was a failure in trying to end my life as well. And they called me Dr. Lightar because I've been through a bit of stuff, like most of us have who listen to this, you know. But I'm able to come out the other side in a different way, really. And it was basically to decapitate myself from all the thoughts and the ideas and the emotions and the attitudes that had guided my life up to that point, and I sort of let go and started to listen to my heart. So, and I think it was all part of a process that maybe I even signed up for myself. But coming up, Martin, I'll be 33 years sober and clean soon. And that's living life naturally without taking any medications to get peace of mind. And I think for me, success to me is just one thing, it's to have peace of mind and to be totally comfortable in my own skin in all situations. And that's where I'm up to today, mate. In myself, I feel great. I was saying to you before, I'm coming up to 70 years of age. It'll be me if I complete it. It'll be my 21st marathon next year. I've just swum the River Mersey for the fourth time across. You see, I'm doing all right. I'm not very quick at these things, but I'm just a bit of a plodder. So my life's been transformed, Martin, by listening to the guidance of my heart or my intuition rather than to listening to anything that's been going on in here. Because I have a bloke who guides me, and he said all those years ago, he said, Joe, he said, every time I say something to you and try and explain it, you say, I know. And he said, there's an expression, it says, know all knows, I won't say it, but most people will know what that is. And he said, I see you, Joe, as a knowledgeable idiot. Right. And he said, because everything that you've learned, all the qualifications you've got, have brought you to the point of wanting to be dead and trying to kill yourself. So he said, why don't you tomorrow, right, wake up with a clean sheet and start again? And as I say, Martin, that was 33 years ago. And my life has miraculously transformed just by listening to my heart. That was a bit of a long story, that, mate. But what I found is, just to put it in a nutshell, is I was ducking and diving and dodging and weaving and living everybody else's life. And I wasn't being true to myself. I was very pretentious. I couldn't tell the truth. I couldn't look anybody in the eyes. I was afraid and living my life on the defensive. And now I don't have to. Over to you, old fruit.
Beautiful. It's like amazing. And I've heard this before, but I mean, literally, like nearly word for word, you're sharing my story. Everything that you share is like, it's exactly my experience. I haven't done marathons and swum the Mersey, but your early experiences, it's pretty much all the same. And I want to touch on that because it really sort of came to me when you talked about that 12, 13 years old. That was me. I think it was 13 years old. First found alcohol. I want to like ask you, what do you feel? Like growing up in Ireland for me, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, you're aiming to start drinking. No, it's something you're looking for. It's something it's your destiny. You're going to do it. And if you're an Irish family, it's like it's there in front of you. It's not like will you? It's like when's it going to start? And I'd like to, if you could tap into that 12 or 13-year-old now as a boy, what do you feel? I know you said when you started that, it made you feel like, I think you said like who you wanted to be. What do you feel like that? Because of course there's many young boys that are in that. It's a very different world, and now. But what do you feel draws us into that? Because you didn't know before you have that drink that that's going to make you feel in a way that you want. But there's something pulling us in there. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Irish Catholicism, mate. I was brought up going to the Irish Centre every week, and my brother's a fiddle player and a violin player. My sister did the penny, the tin whistle, right, and I just did the drinking because I was a bit older than them. But so there was that. It was almost like a cultural expectation
Yeah.
of this is the way that a man behaves, and that's the whole thing. Because you know because I was highly sensitive, I wasn't quite the same as most of my peers. You know, they could act in a tough way. I was always frightened of other men. I spent most of my life around girls and women, right, and that carried on through most of my life. You know what I mean? Right, I felt comfy in the company of women more than men. You know, because I was always threatened physically. You know, because of maybe my physical sort of handicaps, which weren't too bad because I was sort of moving out of those. Um, but there was that, and but also Martin, and it's just going to come up is was my attitude that I was brought up regarding sex, mate. Right, I was told from a very early age, or it was, I felt that sex was a sin. Right, sex was a bad thing. If you mention it, you're going to hell. In fact, I went to at 11 years of age, I went away to because I was the eldest in the family, kids. I was sent away to start my training as a priest, you know,
Mm.
and that would have been 12 years of basic indoctrination, really. And I'm just speaking from, I don't mean to upset anybody. I'm just trying to talk about my personal lived experience, you know. And I was frightened there all the time, and it only lasted 18 months, thank God, because I was missing my mother all the time, really. So an 11-year-old lad, 200 miles away in a predominantly male environment, it was frightening, mate. And
Mm.
I've looked back at some of my alcoholism and thought, was I abused there? Right? Have I? Is it something that I'm hiding? And I don't think that I was. But if I was, I was, and I can handle things like that now. But from there, I came home, and the bishop, he said that I could go to any seminary in the world, right? Because they felt that because of my sensitivity, that I'd make a fantastic priest and all that. I see that in a different way now, mate. But then I said no because I wanted to be at home. I was sent to a Christian brothers school called Saint Anselm's, and it was like out of the frying pan into the fire. I was terrified, mate. And the only way that you learned in St. Anselm's was if you got anything wrong, they strapped you, right? So they taught us by fear. So I couldn't learn anything because when I'm afraid, right, I can't think clearly, you know. But in that process, here's the first sex education lesson that we ever had. It must have been when we were about 13. It was all boys school, obviously. It was like, some of you boys will be growing hair now where you've never had hair before. And we're all looking at each other going, yeah, that's happening to us. And you'll be having feelings that you've never had feelings in these places before. And we're all looking at each other nodding. And the next line was, and if you touch it, you're going to hell. That was it. That was it, mate. Anyway, from that day on, we were all in hell.
Yes, there was no escaping.
So, but the point I'm getting to, because I don't know, I'll go on, talking about getting a word in edgeways.
Come on, this is what we're
Um,
here for.
but the point about it is, Martin, because of that repression of that, basically that sexual creative energy, when I drank, it all came out, mate, and it
Mm.
directed my life for such a long time. Now, it wasn't to have sex, funnily enough, because I more wanted, and I'm being truthful about it now, in comparison to the lads that I was around, I more wanted to find somebody to hug and to have intimacy with and stuff.
Mm.
So that came first,
Yeah.
right, in looking for girlfriends. But then, obviously, as the closeness came in, other stuff come up. And when I was like drinking, right, it overtook me, mate. It overpowered me. I've no idea where I've just gone with that. But I mean, you asked the question, Irish Catholicism for me, right, and also sexual repression, mate, the two big no-nos as far as I'm concerned now. And I
Yeah.
think now, as we're going through this great shift in consciousness, I think everybody is being forced almost to look at their attitudes towards control and repression. Over to you, mate.
Absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. And again, just the kind of resonance with experience. Like I was a altar boy. Again, it's just something you do. I was an altar boy. And so there was I remember one of the big ceremonies must have been Easter or something like that. I was the one that held the incense. So the thing, and you swing it back and forward, light the charcoal and burn the incense. And so the Monsignor that was that's some level up from a priest, I was terrified of. I was absolutely terrified of him. And I remember holding that thing, and because I was standing the wrong way, one time he grabbed my shoulder and he squeezed my shoulder and turned me around like this to stand in the right way. But I'm swinging this thing, and it starts to burn my hand. So my fingers start to burn, and because I was so afraid, I let it burn my hand and let it the whole thing blistered up, and I burnt my hand because I was too afraid. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, like like how, like I was wanting to go through. I don't know what age I was at that stage, but that was going through, and it's interesting you could remember like the sex education. I have no memory whatsoever of the first, but I know it would have come from some, unconscious, like something similar like that. And yeah, it's very prominent in like everyone I knew. You didn't talk about it. It wasn't, but everyone wanted it, and you feel wrong for wanting it. And yes, the alcohol, exactly the same for me. That was the way to get over some shame and guilt that you've got from somewhere that you don't even know why you've got it. And I know for me, and I think for you, you've touched on it there. When alcohol was in, for me, any sort of morality was gone completely.
Yeah.
All inhibitions are gone, but also any sort of morality. I could do anything. And I would say the way I feel it now, that's they don't call it the demon drink for nothing. That's a doorway to be influenced. So we could go down that track as well. I've seen that so much clearer now because 10 years ago since I've had the last drink ever in this life. And it's always an easy date to remember, the 16th of March. But I've just seen it more and more clearly how that, like, alcohol is just a wide open gateway for lower dimensional entities to just do whatever, use these vessels and vehicles. And yeah, I could see it. Morals completely out the window. But like the upside, let's say, of it, inhibitions are gone. Sometimes you're more confident. Sometimes you're able to say and speak and act in ways which you weren't before. I'm curious when you said, you're always sensitive, because I know now that I was sensitive, but I hadn't a clue. I just thought there was something wrong with me my whole life when I was younger. That I was. Did you know, like somewhere that your sensitiveness is some sort of gift that wasn't something wrong? Because like it's not until years later that I kind of identified this sensitivity.
No, I looking back, it's easy to see now, really,
Yeah.
because I was basically dyslexic, dyspraxic, and dyscalculic because of fear. I was
Mm,
always afraid, Martin, and therefore I couldn't think clearly, right, unless I was by myself. So I spent a lot of time sort of reclusively on my own, playing by
mm,
myself, and I was happy then. But then when any sort of person came around or any noise or anything, I changed completely and went into this sort of defensive state.
mm.
And I see that as clear as anything now. So when I drank, right, it gave me the Dutch courage or the confidence because I had terrible social anxiety disorder. I
Yeah.
couldn't be around people except for my family. We had a good, strong, and we still got a good, strong, loving, caring family. We look after each other. If there's any shit that goes on, we all get together straight away. Even
Yeah.
though we have our differences.
Yes.
So there was that. I had social anxiety disorder. But when I got drink down me, right, then I was up on the tables, giving it loads, dancing. So I went from it's almost like a manic depression or a bipolar extremism, really.
Mm.
So I mean, I know that we're all neurodiverse, but I was like definitely neurodivergent because there was no middle point. And you know yourself, they explain it as like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that was
Yeah.
my life, really. And some things that happened in drink, I look back and I'm so sort of, I'm not guilty about anything now because I realize why it happened.
Yeah.
But what I'm beginning to see, Martin, is these are powerful instincts that get repressed.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of the way that we're taught, programmed, and conditioned, these natural flows are misdirected, or to use a good word, they're perverted, mate. They
Yeah.
become perverted. So they
Yeah.
don't flow naturally. And therefore, they build up. So there's almost like a compression that goes on that needs to come out and vent itself. Now, the other thing that I used to do as well, right, is I was told to respect authority and be kind to everybody and all that sort of business, as though your feelings don't count and just be help everybody. But when I had a few down me, if you looked at me the wrong way, I'd be saying like things like, "What are you looking at?" Right, and I'd turn into this fucking monster. Excuse my French, but
Yeah.
I'd turn into this monster of me, really big, strong men. I used to go to the pub the next day, mate, and they used to say to me, "Don't come in today, Joe. Just go away." Right. And so when I ended up going into the pub, I'd have to open the door I'd look at somebody I knew and they'd nod as if to say, no, you're all right to come in, right? Or they'd just like say, go, Joe. Because, and these things used to happen, Martin, in blackouts. I used to think blackout is when you fell in the corner unconscious and they just like left you there, you know. But blackout means that you can't remember a thing because you're working from a different dimension,
Yeah.
you know. So you know, and I don't see things like as such like I used to, like demonic possession. I think what happens is all those repressed instincts have almost got a personality of their own, and they emerge to try and resettle themselves. But in that process, it's so destructive and so violent. I used to come round, Martin, and think, well, I can't remember what's gone on. And people used to have to try and tell me, do you not remember that? And I swear, there's lots and lots of things, Martin, I can't remember, right? I'm not trying to hide anything. If anything ever came up, right, I would apologize profusely and I'd try and reset the balance, you know, in a karmic sort of neutralizing way.
Mm.
But Martin, I didn't know. I just felt awkward
Yeah.
all the time and
Same.
afraid. Awkward and afraid.
Yeah. Phew. Yeah, that hits home very, very strongly. And I remember 10 years ago on the 16th of March, I woke up that morning not knowing where I was, hadn't a clue where I was. I'd put my bags in a hotel somewhere near Bristol, and I was there for my brother-in-law's stag do, and I was sober for 6 months at this time, and I'm meeting all my friends coming over from Ireland, and they put the pressure on. They put the pressure on. I wasn't strong enough then to say no, and so 2 days just completely disappeared. My bags were still in the hotel. The hotel called the police because they thought someone had died. They just seen bags and no one had ever come back. And I remember waking up that morning, and there's a guy that I know was in the well, I do know him, but when I woke up, I didn't know where I was, and he's in the toilet throwing up, speaking to his puke, and I just knew. I just had this thing just clicked, and it just said, I will never ever ever wake up like this again. And it was so definite, it was so final, it was so absolute. It wasn't like I needed some willpower or something for it.
Yeah.
It was this, never will I wake up like this again. And that was that. But yeah, I feel you, I hear you. Like it's amazing, like the, as I say, like the memories from those times, it's so hazy, they're so, and like how I'm still here, like you, how I'm still here, I don't know. Like I woke up one time just nearly half hanging off a balcony 3 floors up in Australia. I climbed up the outside of the wall. All these sorts of things, like you just, I know I've had many times, and I feel you probably have, and some people watching as well, where we have left our body and it's not been our time. We've decided we're coming back into this life. We're not, we're coming back in. I know that's happened multiple times. They call it near death experience, but this is near death experience where you don't have the memory of it. And yeah, I know that's happened many times. And so yeah, wow. So we really touched into the and that, now for young men, young boys, we don't know, I don't know how many young men or young boys will see this, but we want to talk to it because we're talking about this evolution. They've got a whole lot of more, huge amount of more challenges, not just the alcohol, the drugs, they've got so many other things now that is appearing. Wonder, what are you seeing for, like I've got a 5-year-old son, what are you seeing for young men now, young boys, let's say in that position where we are now, and the things that they're facing? Because maybe the religion in a general sense in the world is not as much as of an influence now, but it's been replaced by several other religions that are not called religions. What are you seeing for young boys and men now at that stage where we dipped into that, like 12, 13, 14?
Yeah, well, I think just to recap on the what happened to me, I sort of on the last time, I hope it's the last time I tried to top myself, right? I took a whole load of tablets and a bottle of sherry, and this peace that passeth all understanding descended upon me. You know, it did, and that's why I know there's something else going on in the invisible realms, and I don't get too attached to it now. I just have a feeling, but I got the very strong feeling was, son, you actually signed up for this, right? You shouldn't have signed on the dotted line if you couldn't take a joke. You know, that was that one, right? And it felt almost light-hearted, but I felt so peaceful, and I felt like I was going home. And at the time, I sort of remember saying, "Look, God, if there is a God," because I mean, I'd lost touch with all this stuff, and I'm not a religious person; it's a feeling, as I say. I just said, "Look, I'm hurting so many people. I'm hurting myself. I don't know what to do. I can't go through with it anymore. Then this peace descended upon me, right? And then I thought, oh, thank God for that. I'm going. And then I started having another fucking alcoholic epileptic fit. And I thought, oh, Jesus. So I ended up, and on that time, I was in the psychiatric department because I was in there 3 times. I was in for 8 weeks, mate. I was that ill, and I was having all sorts of psychotic episodes, and I was hearing voices, and I was all sorts of things were happening. And I see now that it wasn't psychosis, mate. It was a spiritual awakening. The
Mm,
door was completely open, and from that moment on, I got the feeling that I was turned round, kicked up the arse, and this thing said to me, we'll show you now, one step at a time, one breath at a time, how to do this naturally. And your job, Joe, is to show other people as well. Right.
mhm,
So what I've realized, Martin, is that I was nothing but a programmed automaton, and I was living everybody else's ideas on how to live, like capitalism, become somebody, right? Become somebody, make money, get a position of power. That's how you become successful. And for me these days, and that might be so for some people, but it isn't for me, because I think that the solution to this and peace of mind is to become nobody, mate. And I'm talking from an ego point of view. And I don't think that we can destroy the ego, because I think that's a destructive way. But I think we can let go of the bonds of attachment that we've been programmed or bound to. Right? Sounds a bit thing. So for anybody young that's listening, I would say make up your own mind and play it by ear. Right? Just examine, where did I get the ideas from on how to live my life? And do they conflict with something deep inside of me? Because I'm saying that everybody's got deep within them. Some people might call it a soul. I call soul a source of unconditional love. There's something within us, right, that needs to emerge and experience itself. And when you're in that natural passion and enthusiasm, you feel happy, you're useful, you don't want to cause any trouble. In fact, you want to become helpful, right? And this is the love that most people search for outside of themselves. But really, it's an indwelling thing, it's innate. We're born with it, and it just needs to express itself. But unfortunately, the world, the way it's set up, tries to prevent us from doing that in all sorts of different ways.
mhm.
And I think more and more people are waking up to the fact now that we've almost like been imprisoned in this like servitude. See, I'm on one now, and I realize that the more I wake up, and I think that that's an ever on, that's always an ongoing process, that you get to see, if you can relax in yourself and just allow it to happen, right, in this being, your mind opens up more and you can see much more of what it is to be truthful.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, listening to that inner voice to make up your mind, make up your own mind is quite challenging for most people, but I would say for young people now. Like I was speaking to a friend of mine in Ireland who actually deals with a lot of young men that may have, I suppose, in your words, they could say it like spiritual awakening, but it's appearing as psychosis, that breakdowns. And he was sharing me a pattern, at least four or five, I think, four or five young men that had come to him with these breakdowns, whatever was going wrong with them, and each of them had this same story. And this story was that Elon Musk was going to save their lives. Elon Musk was going to give them all this money. Elon Musk was going to do this, was going to do that. And the past few years, we've talked about this before. The past few years, the thought forms and
Yeah.
the field of thought is very easily manipulable, if that's even a word. There is the ability to manipulate thought forms, and these young men, boys, very young, no, quite young, were all coming with this same story, and they're having these breakdowns. But we know, like, that there's the ability to put thought forms out there, and we don't have to go in. We can go into it, where it's coming from. I suppose it doesn't really matter. Just that we're aware that you know just because thoughts and even emotions can appear to us, noticing what is actually my thoughts and like what you're saying, like make up my own decision. What do I think? What do I choose? When there's all of this junk, there's all of this like opposing ideas out there. There's so much going on. how can someone in that space, like, I mean, I've met some young people that are just amazing, like awake and clear, but for someone like who's grown up with only the internet, let's say some young, we were in a world where internet and mobile phones didn't exist. They've in a world where it's only ever been that, they've always had that technology. It must be a challenge for them to really be able to distinguish what is my thoughts, what is my actual feelings, what are my emotions, and how can I distinguish to make my decision, like you said, and play it by ear when there's so many, let's say, influences that can sway that for them.
Yeah, it's they call it social media for a reason, because the herd instinct is powerful.
Mm,
It's what will they think of me, and in a way, when you sort of your heart opens, you come to a position that if you listen to it and take action, and the information that you're being given from your heart or your intuition, it actually brings you out of all that social stuff.
mm,
And so you're not then influenced by an external morality. You start to develop, and this internal moral code emerges, which will be directly linked, is the way I see it, is to your soul's vibration or your soul's frequency. So really, more than anything else, is I think it's a setup that we get to know ourselves, know who we are, know why we're here, knowing what the purpose of our life is, and knowing the actions to take one breath at a time in order for us to go forward. Here's the hard part, Martin: without any expectations other than a joyful, open, passionate, flowing feeling, right?
mm,
Because expectations, my thing is that peace of mind is inversely proportional to expectations. That means the more expectations you have about how things should turn out according to you, the less peace of mind you have. Because we
mm.
know, don't we? We know, someone will say to you, "What's your 5 year plan?" It's like a joke, isn't it? Right. And people say to me, "What's your 5 minute plan?" I've got no idea. Because if you're really living, here's a posh word coming up, extemporaneously, that means there's no script. All you're doing is you're relying on the way that you feel from one moment to the next. But there's a few riders, because the actions that you take should be healthy and harmless, right? And if you're, I'm not talking about in defending yourself. I don't mean that you can like just lay there and let people shit on you. But what I'm saying is, it's emotional reactivity that's the problem.
Mm.
So this is really about developing mindfulness, and mindfulness to me just simply means breathing in a certain way and taking a step back so you can see the bigger picture a bit more clearly. So then you get a bigger menu of options then. Just choose the healthy and the hygienic ones.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and like you've said a couple of times here, we've all signed up for this. We might not have read all the small print and remember it all, but we've all signed up for this. And the beings that are coming in, they know what they're coming in for. They might forget it, like we all do, but there's a perfected plan behind all of this. And even though we might be aware of it at times, and sometimes we forget, I do have this, it is a deep knowing that everything is going to be all right. Everything is all right. We're just here for this experiencing, like you talked about earlier. And so let's getting back. So, you know, we talked about our experiences of early um, masculinity. I want to talk now about, at that time, it's probably an obvious thing as well, but who were your masculine role models at that time in your early life? Can you think of like any positive masculine role models, or what was your ideal, let's say, I don't know if it's through the lens of that alcohol at 13 years old, but who was the positive or not so positive masculine role models for you that you looked to?
Yeah, well, my brother and I played a lot of golf. We were addicted to golf when we were younger.
Mm,
So it was things like I loved the golf, and I loved the whole golf lifestyle, and I was always trying to aim to make enough money so that I could join the local golf club and stuff. So we started off caddying, right? And we made enough money then to join the local golf club. And then I was quite good at golf. My brother was better than me. He turned a professional.
mm,
But my whole sort of focus then, or target, right, was to become somebody in the golf club. So I was addicted to. We used to play 3 rounds of golf a day, and stuff like this. It was marvelous, and I loved being out in the outdoors. But it's people like Arnold Palmer,
Uh,
Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and
mm,
I used to be able to save up and get all the golf magazines. So that's really, I can't think. I was never into football. I tried to get into football like my mates and stuff like that. I mean, they were fanatical about Liverpool and Everton and Tranmere Rovers. It didn't do a single thing for me.
mm.
Being out in the open and the golf side of things, because it felt cleaner for some reason. I can't explain that, but it seemed cleaner, and they seemed like sort of more polite and more, and stuff like that. So that's all I'm saying really, is I can't think of even like the pop music. I mean, I was brought up in the era of the Beatles and things, so double white LP and the double red and the double blue LPs and stuff like that. But as for anybody particular, I can't think of anybody, Martin.
I've had this conversation with so many men, and well, maybe you're not shocked as to how many people have that same answer. That we didn't, there's not, there's some do, but there's a huge amount where they don't have, or like you, it might be some sort of celebrity or sports star or something like that. That's where we saw. What do you feel it was about the golf? And by the way, that's another synchronicity as well. I was like mad into golf as well, addicted. I was playing 2 rounds in a day. I would get the buggy so I could go around again myself. What did you play off?
I got down to five.
Wow, nice. I know 9 was as low as I got, but then again, once the drink hit, the golf went out the window very quickly. Um, but yeah, how many men that I've spoken to, would ask that question, and they literally can't think of a single one of where, oh, that's what it's like to be a man. That's what it's like to be, unless, yeah, sports stars. What do you feel like it was with these golfers? Do you think it was the the lifestyle? Was it the mastery? What do you think it was with them?
No, the lifestyle, mate, the
Lifestyle.
lifestyle. Yeah, and they were such nice people as well, and they were very polite, and they looked very healthy and stuff,
Mm,
you know. And just the thing, I used to go out playing golf by myself a lot as well. And looking back now, I had loads and loads of mystical experiences on the golf course by
right.
myself. I can remember one shot; I'll never forget it. When you have a really strong spiritual experience and the whole world stops and everything else. Well, this slow motion, I hit a 5-iron, right, and it was the slowest thing, and I just watched it just crawl like that, and it landed about a foot past the flag, and it spun back to about an inch away. And that was the best shot I've ever heard. And when you don't feel it off the club, but you can see.
Oh
So
yeah,
I used to love those things because I used to get that really big expanded. Isn't nature? Isn't life wonderful? Which reminds me, as a child as well, I used to get that a lot. But then I'd always get depressed afterwards. It was like a complete blissful
yeah.
feeling. But when I came back to earth again, I used to be very depressed. So my mother was always worried about me because I seemed to be depressed a lot. But that was part of that bipolarity, really. There was like bliss consciousness, and then there was like the hell side of it, really.
Mm. Yeah, I
I
was
don't
the
know why
same.
I've shared that, mate, but it's just coming up, so I'll just say it,
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what the space is. Yeah, I like the sport. I love the sport. And again, addictions. If I was into it, I was just into it. It was all in, and I was like, didn't do anything else. I didn't have any of those like through golf or anything. That the only thing that did it for me was MDMA, and that was a little bit later, in the 90s. That was the beginning of getting this like heart open, like just love with everything for a few hours. And I grew up in Northern Ireland. We go to this nightclub, and I still to this day believe that MDMA was one of the biggest catalysts for the peace process in Northern Ireland. Because my generation went into these nightclubs, and for a few hours at least, we were just in love, hearts open. Didn't matter, Catholic, Protestant, Republican, loyalist. They were all in this place together, and we were just like, heart open. I really believe that. There's a generation where that happened, but then of course that's because with any temporary or medicinal opening, it doesn't last. It's opening a door. It's showing you the top of the mountain, but you have to go straight back down the mountain again. That's with any of these things. It opened up, and of course I didn't have the language for that at the time. But then yes, it was like this ecstatic ecstasy, this ecstatic, blissful, opening, loving thing, and then this deep, dark lows where I just go into these deep depressions and not want to come out. And there was a honeymoon period with it as well, where you didn't have any. You were just high for uh, some time, months, I would say. But yeah, there's this boom bust, and that cycle has actually continued to me. I'd like to ask. I don't know if I've ever asked you this, because I feel, I had the addictions with alcohol, with drugs, with materiality, all sorts of things, and I feel that I have shit. I don't feel like not addicted anymore. I've just shifted those addictions in a most part to things that are beneficial to myself and others now, but there's still very much this addictive quality within me. So I would say definitely addicted to reading, addicted to learning, addicted to books, to this sort of thing. Do you still have that addictive tendency, but maybe directed in another way, or how is that for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not addicted to material things now. I'm addicted to learning more. I
Mm,
want to learn more so I can sort of pass this message on, and share my experience and become more effective, really, at carrying the message. And the message is what you're looking for is in your heart. And that's what I do, Martin. I try and simply explain to people the neuroscience of an opening heart.
mm,
Because, right, the problem wasn't not knowing what to do. I knew what I needed to do. Lack of power was the dilemma.
mm,
So, how do you touch the power to overcome these deeply ingrained habits?
yeah.
You can't do it from within the human mind. So, the solution is beyond mind, and it's in the deeper recesses. I know this is like paradoxical, in the deeper recesses of a higher power.
Mm,
So you have to go, in my view, you have to go downwards, right, hand in hand with your intuitive innate self, and you almost have to reparent that child that was frightened and hiding in the corner. But there's another aspect, you see, because there's two things that block you, in my opinion, from going forward. One is fear, which is easy to understand, but the other is pride. Intellectual pride stopped me from going forward because my head would say, "What a load of bollocks," right? But that's why I have a sponsor, you see, because he keeps pointing out to me, Joe. They used to say that an alcoholic who is definite about something is a dangerous creature. So
mm,
there's always an element of Thomas in me. I think that he was probably the best disciple because he would say to Christ, "I'm not having it. I don't believe you." And I'm not religious. I'm just using that as an example
yeah.
because I think at depth, we need, in order to go forward, we need to question absolutely everything. And I think that's part of discernment and discrimination. And
Mm,
Martin, if I honestly don't know what to do in a situation, which I normally do, I'm confident most of the time. If I really don't know, I have to be honest. And I've got like 5 people in the world who just ring up. I'll share what's happening. They won't give me any advice, right? They'll just put me back to the teachings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous has got nothing to do with drink. You mentioned all these, MDMA and stuff. I used to be the boss of a laboratory, a pathology department, where we had all the pure stuff in the world, right? Because we had to do standard curves for people who've OD'd on stuff. So
mm.
being a scientist, yeah, you have to experiment, don't you, mate? You know what I mean? So, you know,
Read that
I,
too.
and what I've come to is, this is what I've come to is that different chemicals, right, activate different parts of the brain. And where I'm up to now is we are multi-dimensional creatures, human beings, but we've been blocked off from a lot of our intelligences, right, for nefarious reasons without going down that pathway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But what's happening now is if we can allow this purge to come through and basically unblock us from inside out, right, then all these different ways of thinking are starting to come to us now.
Mm,
And people are wrecked because there's all this information coming in. This is where I was in 1987 at the time of something called a harmonic convergence. I was trying to throw myself off bridges because I couldn't handle all the information that was coming in. But
mm,
it wasn't so much the cognitive thinking side, it was emotionally, I didn't know how to process my emotions. And
mm,
I think part of my job now is to say to people, you're in charge of the way you handle your emotional energy. Don't be pointing the finger at anybody else. This is about emotional growth. I'll show you, but I can't do it for you. So,
mm.
Martin, there's a great personal responsibility that goes with this, and us having this talk. Some people might want to hear that because they might have spent all their life depending on other people But in the end, I think the universe is pointing us back to ourselves to say what you need is in you. Start using it now.
Mm.
Christ, that was a bit serious, mate, but there, it's got the way it's coming out.
Beautiful, beautiful, brother. And yeah, you've touched on a part now that's very common for men in any, like, pretty much you hear this if you go into like in any men's work groups, and there's this kind of stereotype that's quite accurate that a lot of men are not in connection with their emotions. That a lot of men don't have emotional intelligence. A lot of men don't have the vocabulary to speak about their emotions. They haven't been taught it, but as a a nature within us as well, that it's there's this idea that we are less in tune with our emotions. And I'm finding that I've heard this come through myself. Men are less connected with their emotions, women are more connected. And I don't think that that's actually true now. I don't feel that it's true. I feel like you've just said, we just haven't had the tools to deal with it now. And because of this evolution now, we're realizing these tools that were always within us, and that we're all emotional beings. We're just different polarities of this. And as this emotional intelligence comes through the male part of the species, that more and more we'll see that we weren't ever actually disconnected from our emotional bodies, our emotional beings. We just didn't have the like the software. We didn't have we needed a software upgrade. The hardware was always there, the software was not available to us. And I think that's a more of a that feels what is how would I say it? Because it felt like before, this is like there was something broken in the man. This is all the things that we were like, when we were younger. Oh, something's wrong. I need this drink. I need the drugs. I need the woman. I need the thing. Then we come into these spiritual communities, and it comes through. It comes through us. There's this theme, that the masculine is not as connected with their heart. So we're starting on this foot where there's something broken, something missing. And I'm more and more seeing that. Again, I'm talking mostly about myself. I'm saying, no, actually, I felt all the time like you. I felt I felt like I want to throw myself off the bridge. I feel like I felt things people weren't saying my whole life. I could feel what was going on, even though they weren't saying it. Like you, that sensitivity. And it's just we didn't have that language, and I feel that language now, that ability is more clear for us. And with people like you and others that are out in the world, backing this up with the data and the science is important as well. And I feel like boys and men coming through now are going to have a different experience, hopefully. But what do you feel how do we get from there, like this feeling, I'm broken, there's something missing, there's something wrong? Then I might go into personal development, I might go into some sort of I have some sort of spiritual awakening, and then again I'm starting at minus. Maybe this is just my experience. I'm starting like, oh, I have to get to reach this point of connecting with my heart as a man or whatever. Do you does that resonate with you? Do you feel, is that
Yeah,
something?
yeah. I think it's going to be an automatic process now, the way it's coming in. It's more powerful than us.
Mm,
I think this great big shift in consciousness that's happening, the Great Awakening, right? It's like a tidal wave, really. And what's going to happen is if we resist and we try and hang on to our old ideas and emotions and programs and conditionings, it's going to cause us so much emotional turbulence that we're going to have to go and talk to somebody about it. And if we can already say, this is what I used to be like. See, I think that we were taught big boys don't cry. You've got to
mm,
show that you're tough and all that shit. You know what I mean? So consequently, when the feelings came, we closed our throat and pushed them down again and became like an atomic bomb waiting to go off. So a few drinks and a trigger, we could express it then, and all
mm.
that sort of business. But I've learned now that I'm writing a book, as you know. It's called the F off approach to health and happiness, right? And the F off stands for focus on feelings first, right? And that's the whole point, is that if I'm feeling, this is dead important, this, according to me, if I if I'm feeling emotionally disturbed, right? I'm calling out the emotional disturbance now. Let's call that a negative emotional state. Not It doesn't mean to say that we don't have feelings, because there's natural feelings and then there's fight and flight feelings as well. If we're in fight and flight, then we're ready to fight, right?
Mm,
We don't want to be like that because only fear causes us to do that. And because we're trying to be honest now, so I'd say if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest, right? That's
mm,
the first thing. So emotional disturbance means that at some level in our processing, whether it be conscious or unconscious, our ego has picked up a threat. That's what a trigger is. It's a threat to the ego because the divine part of us is all powerful. It can't be threatened, right? Divine love can't be threatened because it's like it loves everybody. But the other side of us, the ego side of us, right? If we get a tug, rather than going forward emotionally, reactively, we can mindfully take a step back, breathe away, go into the audience of our own experience, and actually replay the thing again and see what is it that I have to learn? Where is this hooking me? And what do I have to let go of? Because, Martin, it goes much deeper. This is about epigenetics. It's about how genes express themselves and how we've been blocked and programmed from being other than who we really are. I feel
mm,
like the Pope again today. I'm like, it's just coming out, mate, because it's so important that men start to express these things. And what will happen is, in my experience, I've seen it loads of times, is the real man that's been trying to come out will fulfill his proper role in, and I'm not talking about something outside. I think that, as we've talked about before, maybe next time, there's a masculine and a feminine in all of us, right? And this is for the real masculine to emerge to look after the real feminine that's within us. And once we start to cooperate within ourselves, we can see clearly then how we need to take action outside of ourselves.
mm.
I'm
Yeah.
on the fucking, I'm on the pulpit today, mate, giving it. But it's important because I think for me, and I'm going to upset people by saying this, just sitting there sending out love and light doesn't do it for me, mate. Right? I think that we've got to get oof and say, don't fuck with me, right? I'm here to help you, right? But just like get out of my way because I'm going forward, right?
Yeah, these like this is the thing, like having these open, vulnerable, authentic conversations, like we've always, been open to do, is it's so important because in general, in this world, this matrix, this whatever we want to call it, these open, honest conversations, vulnerable, raw conversations don't always happen. And we choose to, because it works for us. I mean, when I started doing like my videos, it was like public psychotherapy for myself. It was public. That's what it was. I was just like, I would just press live and just bleh, it would just come out. And then eventually, like you said, once the fear came out, and once all probably a lot of junk came out, then there was just like this spontaneous flow, and there was this like real balance of masculine and feminine. But for me, like when I was in those spaces and I was just expressing, I was that I was in my genius in that time. And then I could turn off that video, and in 1 second I could go from that to the depths of like the absolute opposite of that. My wife would look at me the wrong way. She'd say something like, and like it's like that. And that's been a constant challenge for me. And I was even telling you before we come on the call today, like I've been on this work for I don't know how many years now, and like still today something pops up. For me, it's a real challenge. Confrontation is a big challenge for me, and especially when on the surface it looks, because of the sensitivity, on the surface it looks like it's just not much, and in the grand scheme of things it's not much, but energetically there's this like huge thing going on energetically. And I have this, again, we're in a beautiful, tranquil, incredible environment, and this real challenging circumstance appeared today. And I could go from this like beautiful space, and shockingly fast when it came to well, it came from fear, and my wife and son was there. And whenever there was a feeling of threat, the change in me was like instantaneous. And it was yeah, like when I felt into it afterwards, it's like I still can't believe how quickly I can shift, and that's how much work I've still got to do, and I continuously work on it. And if we hadn't been doing this call, that's what I would be doing, and I will be doing it after this call. Is really working on that and seeing, that theme. What is that theme? Why is that coming up? Why is that happening again? And that space between stimulus and reaction, and that the ability to create a bigger and bigger space, this mindfulness, the breath, all of these things is so important. But when it comes to confrontation and comes to fear, for me, I'm challenged with that a lot. I just want to say that straight out. I share everything. It's still there for me. I still have a lot of work to do on that, and it's something actually next week I'm going to be doing. I'm going to like a men's work weekend, and one of the days is all based on confrontation. So healthy masculine confrontation. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, just laying it out real where I'm at, and it's continuous, and that gap, that chasm between when I'm really in my genius and when I fall back into it, that there's still a lot of pain in that, because when I'm in the audience, like you said, the audience of that life, seeing this aspect of the self and then seeing this aspect of self and seeing the gap between them, it's still a big challenge for me. So anyone that has seen the stuff that I put out there, all of my stuff disappeared after a while. But I've always talked like this, but just now all that stuff has disappeared, and a lot of stuff, because most of the time I'm sharing. Again, I feel like it's when I'm in my genius, I'm sharing that. But I just want to just share, like, I'm still, really a lot of work to do on that, especially around conflict. Could you speak to conflict for men, for the masculine energy, and yeah, where it takes you?
Yeah, yeah, like you said, it's an ego threat, and my view is now, if you don't want to fight, don't get into the boxing ring. You know what I mean? So it's just become an observer, really. Um, and that's where I am now. If I can feel now the grip coming in, the fight and flight response, and different people have different reactions. Some people, their head tenses and they try and think the way out of it, or others have jaw pain where this is the biggest muscular response to threat. It's biting somebody's throat out. You know what I mean? So because we're in such a polite society, people get physical problems now because they
Mm,
get like things called temporomandibular joint dysfunction, grinding their teeth, all these different things. It's
mm,
just an instinctive response to an ego threat.
yeah.
And if we're here to release the bonds of the ego, so it's not the ego's not the problem, it's our egomania, it's our overreactivity that's the problem. And it doesn't mean to say, Martin, that you don't have to stand up for yourself, because sometimes you might say, anger fucking bout, that's enough. Or you might say, I'm sorry, mate, I was wrong there. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, right, if you can't step forward when you need to or step back when you need to, then you're limited. So it's really looking about, are you a pusher or are you a stepper back,
Mm,
and so then you'll get your underlying characteristics. I know that our intuition, right, will guide us every single day, because I literally only work one day at a time, not
mm,
knowing what's coming up next. But it's almost like, because my higher power is my soul or my guardian angel or whatever. It's this thing that's the bigger part of me. It's not outside of me. It's the next level of my own evolution. It almost like creates the stage on the day and brings in the players and the scenery with which for me to, this is real powerful stuff. I feel more courageous. I feel better than myself. I can go forward. But it's in a sequence, because if I go to a health coach or a life coach and they say, what you need to do now is work on this, I've done that all my life, Martin. They don't know what I need to do because I don't know what I need to do,
mhm.
right? But my higher power does. And that's why in the
Yeah.
morning, like, I tap on my heart and I say, open my heart up, right? Get that feeling of openness. And I say, hello, what's on the cards today? And I get a sense of, sometimes I get a real clear thing to say, you need to tidy your room up and make some space because you've got a lot of paperwork to do. Or sometimes I say, just go and play out, Joe, because there's nothing else to do at the moment. And Martin, that's it seems to work, and people don't understand how it operates because they're still sort of programmed into how they've been brought up. Let me just say this. I know that most of the programs that I've had to let go of were basically developed or fed me in the first 7 years of my life, mate.
Mm.
And that's why we're being taken back slowly but surely. And I think we're getting through all those patterns. And when you get good at that, you go back into your mummy's womb. And when you've done all them ones, you go back into your dad then, And then when you do that, you go down the lines of our ancestral heritage and you start unlocking those as well. So we're almost like going backwards now to get back to source. And I've got a big thing going up my spine here when I'm talking about this. So this is about going backwards to go forwards, to say
Mm.
those words really. But guided by the sequence that we're provided with by our intuition and not some sort of clever clogs outside of us, including ourselves. I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's answered your question, mate, but
I can't even remember what the question was, so that doesn't
no,
matter.
no, neither was I. I was too busy listening to my own voice. There's someone here that say he loves the sound of his own voice, and they'll be
Yes.
say, I can tell what they're thinking because my telepathy is increasing all the time as well.
It's a beautiful getting a front row seat in the audience when it's that open-hearted sharing and wisdom that just flows. Like it's incredible. It's beautiful. So we got up to, where did we get on the masculine journey? We got up to past like kind of the role models and the stepping through, and I think something you touched on I'd like to ask you about, and this is something that I think will be a theme in these calls, is you mentioned like what the real masculine is. What is this masculine that we're stepping into? So I'd like to ask you, for you, what is that? What is this real masculine that we're stepping into?
It's a feeling, Martin. It's a feeling, right? Because I think we get mixed up. I think there's a lot of confusion that's going on between the root chakra, which is the biological sort of attachment to earth, right? And I think there's the root chakra is to do with male and female, man and woman, okay? And I think without getting into the too many details, I'm just talking about the man's got a sticky out bit and the woman's got a tucked in bit, right? And I know there's bits in between there, intersex and stuff like that. I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about the biological sexual characteristics, right? But then when we move up, if you like, to the sacral chakra, that's when the gender comes in. And that's when it becomes masculine and feminine. And generally speaking, well, no. Humans, I'll talk about humans to incorporate both male and female. Humans are androgynous. That means that they've got masculine and feminine characteristics driven by biochemistry and hormones, right?
Mm-hmm.
I describe myself as, right, male from the waist down, right? Or female, feminine from the waist up, you see, because I know that my sensitivity, I was more inclined to be very, very sensitive. I tried to get tough, but it never felt good with me because I sort of had a very feminine sort of above my waist. I had a feminine sort of characteristic, I'll come round in a minute to explaining this, but I think that each individual, right, at the soul level, their DNA expresses itself based upon the curriculum they chose. And as a consequence of that, they'll have a different biochemistry. Their blood will be slightly different, and therefore the hormones will be different, right? However, I think understanding what I do now is, right, I think any disturbance, we can almost say there must be some sort of biochemical imbalance here. However, rather than taking some material substance like a chemical or a pill, I think that our perception needs to change in the meditation dimensions. And I think then that information then comes through energetically. The information comes through from the mind, is then comes to the brain. From the brain, it then floods our endocrine system via the nervous system, which produces various chemicals. I've gone awfully complicated here, but what I'm saying is, I think people will go to the doctor, say they're a bit sort of low in drive. Masculines do this as well. And they'll go and maybe get some testosterone from the doctor or online or something like that, because they're still trying to fit into a standard template that mightn't represent who they really are. Does that make some sort of sense? You'll have to bail me out in a minute. But what I'm trying to say is, my field, as you know, is psycho, neuro, endocrino, immunohematology. And the psycho bit means how we process information in our mind. That's how we perceive the world. We all perceive the world in a different way. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. That means that our personal lived experiences will cause the signals in our nervous system to go differently than everybody. That's that
Mm.
neurodiversity. The information down the nervous system will cause secretions of our hormones, which will then impact upon our stem cells. That will then impact upon the way our DNA expresses itself and how we physically become. So there's so many ways to go here. It's simple at one level, but it's exceedingly complex at another level.
Mm.
Right. I've no
But
idea what the question was you after me, but
again,
we'll
I
have to
don't know
play
either.
this back and think what you're going on about. So what I'm trying to get to in a simple way is sometimes you can't change your behavior from within behavior. You've got to sort of almost discard old habits and old patterns and allow the new consciousness to come in to reprogram our material body.
Yes. Yeah. And that's speeding up. That process is speeding up now, and it's happening at a like at a rapid rate. And then as a result of that, like I say, I think, you know, the soul is like androgynous. The soul is, it doesn't have this, you know, you have these polarities in the universe, but those are like just ways in which you can look at the same thing. If you've got a magnet and you cut it in half, you've still got a north pole and a south pole. It's just like it's the one and the same thing looked at from a different perspective. But as this consciousness rises, and we've had these, let's say, for the last whatever 10,000 years, whatever, we've had this hard and fast rule of this masculine feminine split, or whatever we want to call it, in all sorts of ways. Again, we're not just talking about men and women, but more and more as this consciousness rises now, we're coming into this rising of this more neutral and gender free and like more like aligned with as the whole. And there's a lot of confusion about this. There's a lot of things where people and young people, I suppose, are, you know, they're getting confused. They're getting, and there's a lot of like information, and there's a lot of influences that, let's say, energies that really thrive on separation, that are intensifying these subdivisions of separations, and then these like identities that are coming up, that people are, you know, there's more and more appearing, and they're just separating and subdividing. The energy that would seek to divide us loves this. What do we do as a species to, you know, accept this evolution and know that there's an evolution of the species, a raising of the consciousness into this? We're moving away from this separation of masculine and feminine, this integration of you know, a masculine feminine within all. How do we navigate this now in the way, because it seems like as we're coming closer together, as coming back more to the source, the divisions in this dimension seem to be expanding more. How do we navigate that?
Acceptance is the key. I mean, if we focus on feelings first, if we're extremely disturbed, it basically means that we've got something to let go of. There's an imbalance in there. I mean, this is karma, this really. You know, we can't get away with karmic neutralizing, really. And that's what's happening, you know. And I think just to go before is, if we've all got estrogen and we've all got testosterone in us, right? If you're a female with a load of testosterone, then you'll
Mm,
have a lot of those masculine tendencies, not male tendencies. And that's
mm,
why you can understand, you know, because I was saying before, I'm like gay from the waist up, you know. And presumably, and I've never done this before, I have low testosterone and high estrogen levels, you see. So that will exacerbate any feminine or gentle or those sort of things. There's two sides. There's an ergotropic. Ergo means to get the work done, right? And there's trophotropic. That means nurturing. And where we've been is the ergotropic is associated with the masculine side of our nature. So that's driving force, drive, 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 don't relax, you know. So one's called the fight and flight response, which is generally masculine associated, and one's called the rest and digest response. And if you look at the world now, it's clear to see that we've been ergotropically, sympathetically masculine driven, not male driven, masculine driven. You know,
mm,
because I know some women, right? I mean, some women are stronger than us, right? Faster than us, and all this sort of business. You know what I mean? So this is not male, female; it's masculine, feminine. And I think just to try and make that distinction, if we can understand that, how some males can be really, really sensitive, it's probably their biochemical constituents based upon the soul's lesson that they've chosen. And they'll have challenges with this. If some of them, for example, if there's a male, no, let's do it this way. If there's a male with very powerful estrogen and therefore feminine feelings and characteristics, they may want to try and get their physical body changed. That's something that's very important. And we see a lot of that now.
Mm.
So it's confusing, mate. But where I'm up to on that is I've got no problem whatsoever, right, with anybody doing anything to try and understand who they are, as long as they don't force it on me, right, or we force ourselves on anybody, right, because hormones can do that. They're powerful, especially when you're drinking drugs. You can force yourself on people as well. It, Martin, there's so much here, but what I'm saying is now it's an opportunity for people to step back, look at their previous behavior, understand that they probably can't think their way out of it, but it's only really by the power of their heart that they can be reset to who they essentially are.
Mm. It
That's
always,
how we do it, mate. Acceptance the key. This is who I am. This is what I've done. I accept all that now. I'm willing to be reset to who I am. Not the great reset. This is the real reset. Is to discard who I'm not to be left with who I essentially am.
yeah, the great free set, I like to call it.
Oh, very
We,
good, mate. I've never heard
yes,
that before.
yeah.
I'll say that I made that up and therefore steal it from
Yes,
you
you
from
can,
this point on.
you can borrow that from yourself. Yeah, the great preset. I just checking because I can't even believe, oh, I can't believe it. We're an hour and 11 minutes and I want to check, how's your time? Because we never talked about it. I can't, it's like flowing in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um,
I'm going to have my dinner soon, so let's do 10 minutes if we can. Are you
okay,
all right with that?
sure, sounds good. So we've got a few people joining here. Thank you for I've been sticking the comments up as we go along there. Um, Maybe if there's something anyone would like to ask dear Dr. Joe here, you can put it in the comments here. Maybe there's been questions going as we were on. Drop it in a question if you'd like to ask something. But as we're down to the last 10 minutes, I would like to see, yeah, we call this the future of his story. What are you seeing? So you brought us back into your heart. You've total acceptance, non-judgment, all of these things for what is appearing as this accelerates this shift. We're going to have more and more opportunities to judge, more and more opportunities to not be in acceptance. What do you see is what's the step forward for us now, for men and for humanity? Where are we stepping to? What's down the line?
I think that don't judge thing is a bit of a con job, really, because I think we have to evaluate. And some people think that when you evaluate, you're judging, and therefore we shouldn't think like that. That's
Mm,
another con. That's working from a standard that's basically externally derived. And a lot of stuff that's going on now in the world, like you can't say that word because it upsets people. Tough shit, really, because if you get upset, it means that there's something in your ego that you need to let go of. I don't mean purposely saying it to hurt people, but if I say a word now that's not meant to hurt and somebody gets upset by it, then that's not my problem, Martin. That's their problem because it's part of their emotional sensitivity that's represented by some sort of standard that's actually guiding their behavior. And there's a lot of institutions now, like from top up, sending information right down the line to say, get them, that's us as humanity, get them to tell them that if they say that, they can be locked up for it. If they
mm,
do that, if they stand up for themselves, if they say this, if they say that. Right, my view is that I am responsible for me. I am responsible for the actions that I take, and I am responsible for the consequences of those actions because I'm a big boy now, right? And if I do something that's plainly wrong, I'll feel it, and therefore I might have to go back and say, look, I'm awfully sorry. I'm only still learning myself, right? If I hurt you, I apologize. If there's something I can do to basically balance it out, please tell me what it is, and I'll do my best that I can, because that's what I had to do. I had to make a list of all persons I've harmed, and where it wasn't inconvenient or dangerous or whatever, I had to go back to them face to face and say, I can see the error of me ways now. I'm awfully sorry. If there's some way I can make it up. And most people were delighted because they said, Joe, when you didn't drink, you were such a lovely person. But when you drank, you were a pain in the arse. right? And most people said, good luck to you, right? But some people said to me, Martin, fuck off and never darken my door again. And
Wow.
I had to go back to my sponsor and I said, my sponsor said to me, did you apologize? And did you say, right, that you would do anything to try and put it right? I said, yes. Did you get involved in any argument? I said, no. He said, your job is done now. Let them go now. And that was the process of releasing, if you like, the sins of the past. And then
Mm,
we get to the sins of the past, our personal past. Then we get to the sins of the fathers and the fathers' fathers. Then, right. And that's what cultural conditioning is, mate. And what I see DNA is covered by an epigenetic shroud. I see it basically as crystallized behavior, both personally and from our culture as well. And we're
mm.
almost like having to go back now to unlock those keys in order to get back to who we truly are and where we truly came from in the beginning. Have I upset you and said, what's that say? Oh, right, yeah, that's the one, mate. That's the one. And I think that's what's happening. And how can you tell that you've just made the right choice because you feel better? So
Mm.
it's above all, do no harm as far as you're aware. And if you find out that in some way you've harmed somebody, right, you're right, not their ego. By the way, part of our job is to smash their fucking ego to pieces. We're like ego slayers. But if you're talking from the heart and you're actually expressing the truth from your heart, if it hurts them, Martin, maybe it's supposed to, mate, because
Mm.
that's what this is all about as well. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key to that, like, is mastering communication, because like our human languages are based in separation. Like so many different languages, so many different nuances in language, and this is a big part of my journey, is really being able to master communication, master language in a way that we can communicate those challenging things, difficult things, in a way that mitigates any misunderstandings. Mitigate. There's no way, like you said, you don't see the world the way it is. You see the world the way you are. And something came to me the other day. I heard it. It was like, we don't hear what people say. We hear what we understand. It's
Yeah.
the same way. And like the more we can communicate in the, of course, in the nonverbal, in the space between the words, but also this mastery of the actual language, I feel like that's it's very important, because we've come into this world now where it's like trying to get it into whatever many characters, like everything's like in snippets, and you get these videos, and like there's like this is a long form conversation, like we're an hour and 17 minutes. Someone could take like a little snippet out of this video here,
Yeah.
lots of them probably, and they could take that out of context and put it somewhere, and that would sound completely different to the whole context of this conversation, without the nuance, without everything together. And I feel like our mastery of the language, and our mastery of really knowing how to communicate, and knowing that what we communicate is not necessarily always what is heard, it's what the other truly understands, and what we're hearing is not necessarily what someone has said, it's what we've understood about what they say. And how is your journey with that, like language, and is that
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that you
It's
work with? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is because I work in a university in medicine, right? And we've already been told you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say that, right? And it's difficult because my thing is, as I said before, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest. And when you're working with patients, I say to them, in your own language, and don't be worried about swearing, in your own language, tell me how you feel. What's the thing that plays on your mind before you go to sleep every night? And my colleagues say to me, well, you haven't even talked about diabetes. I said, hang on a second. Right. Right. Hang on a second. Forget that. We'll do that in the next session. What I'm trying to find out is what's causing them emotional disturbance, which will impact upon their autonomic nervous system, which will impact upon the way that they feel, which will cause them to go to comfort seeking behaviors. So if you can just allow me to get out, so it's called, we help the patient to make meaning of their own metaphors. You don't have to even understand what they're saying, but you can ask them in a certain way. What do you mean you feel like you're walking through mud? You can say to them, well, what do you mean by the mud? What's it like? Well, it's really deep, and is there anything in the mud? So they're going deeper and deeper and deeper into their own consciousness. What happens, Martin? It's like a miracle. They go, do you know what? I've only just realised that that's associated with, my mother said you can't have fish on a Friday, right? Oh, you can't have fish on a Thursday because Friday's fish. And what actually happens is they're almost like dredging stuff,
Mm,
but they're coming to their own conclusions, mate, you know. Because
mm.
in the end, I honestly feel that this is a journey of self-discovery, right? And there is a great manipulation of language going on now, especially the English language,
Yep.
because we have almost like things now where I'm writing and typing something and it'll come up to say, you can't put it like that, or better put it this way. So it's almost like we're being guided now by a script that's not ours. I'll just get on to this next bit is, I was told if I want to get anywhere in this field of medicine and whatever, then I'd have to drop the colloquialisms. We'll have to go and find out what a colloquialism was, right? And it's just about talking, right, in slang, basically, and it's the cultural language of the environment that you were brought up with, right?
Yes.
The reason people love me, and they do, there's loads of people like me, they think I'm funny and all that, you know, and they say, and he's got qualifications in, it's because I'll go down, see my mates, I'll say, all right, Bill, how's it going? And, you know, and we left them blind together, you know, and I can see them nudging, saying, he's a doctor, him, and he swears. And that's because that's where I was brought up, Martin, right? And I tried to do all that, hello, professor, it's all very nice to see you, right? And it used to stress the daylights out of me, right? I
Yeah.
don't know where I've gone with that. It's called be yourself, be
Mm,
yourself. And
mm.
there's so many ways that they're trying to manipulate us. But once you see it as clear as anything, it's like, oh, go and fuck off. Right, right. Oh, he swore on the whatever. Right, whatever. And
See,
sometimes it's all right to go like that. You're having a laugh, aren't you? Right. Behave yourself. Right.
you see, when you were talking about the writing there, is that on what platform or is that on, or what device? You know, when you're writing
I don't
something,
know
it's
when I'm on when I'm say go onto my university emails. I'm typing a response or a reply to somebody. All sort of red squiggly things come up and all that, you know.
so it's built
Right?
into the software internally or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it doesn't
Wow.
understand. Because I'll use a colloquial expression like "me head's up my arse" or something like that, you know, or whatever, and it comes up right, and so it keeps coming in with. Say it this way. It's more you soften it, and you know. So
So
that's
this is
happening now a lot.
so this is artificial intelligence telling you how
Oh,
you should speak.
absolutely, mate. Absolutely. But the
Wow.
thing about it is, as well, the way we speak and the way we write and the way we tone, right,
Yeah.
impacts upon the way our DNA expresses itself, right?
Mm.
Because this is this
Manipulative as
field,
well.
and rather than I won't bore you with it, but this is the field that I'm developing called chromatooptogenetics. It's about sound and light. It can either imprison you or free you, right?
Mm.
And
So
it's
Chrome.
working at the level it's working at the level of your semicircular canals in your ear, right? And that information then gets passed down your nervous system, which creates a biochemical response, which goes down to your stem cells, right? Which impacts the way your DNA expresses itself, right?
Mm.
And that's all to do with our perceptual filters,
Give us that term again slowly.
right? Chromato
Chromatic. So
opto
chrome is so
Well,
it's
chromatic. So
color,
it
light.
works well. Chromatic is its color, but it's sound as well because it's the 12 keys in it, or the 12 tones and
Oh, chromatic
semitones,
tone.
right?
Yep.
So I got this clearly. I was given it to by my intuition. You're going to develop a field called chromatooptogenetics,
So
and it will help people.
what's the opto part? That's what I wanted to ask.
Optogenetics is like the fiber optic system of the body, where nerves, because they've tried to block nerve impulses, you see.
Yes.
So there's a layer around some nerve fibers, right? It's almost like a superconducting thing, and
Mm-hmm.
right, and it's about this thing called the fourth phase of water, right? And
Yep.
they've tried to poison our water so that we don't get to the fourth phase of water, because it's like a plasma gel that's superconductive and therefore passes information through our nervous system more readily. So you
Mm.
see, they'll put stuff in our water to try and poison the water to stop the chemicals, and they might even put stuff in the sky to try and stop those. Anyway, you know the score, right?
Little
It's
boys
to
and their
try and
toys.
obstruct. Yeah, yeah. It's try to obstruct and misdirect the energy that's coming in, that's natural, that's
Yes.
trying to free us, right? But you can
Yes.
sense it. If you do more and more mindfulness and you get into sensitivity, you can almost feel where the obstruction and the influence is coming from. So then the most important thing is to breathe in a particular way, open your heart, ground your feet, and therefore stay upright, right?
Beautiful.
I don't know about you, Martin. I'm very sensitive, like sick buildings and things like that. So I can go in a building and I can feel, and it almost like sucks the energy out of you straight
Yeah.
away. Well, I
Yeah.
know now that if I open my heart up, it almost like shields me from all
Mm.
that stuff. And that's the important thing, is for people like ourselves who maybe understand subtle energies a bit more, only because we've trained in it, right? It's helping people to get back to body awareness and energy awareness, so that they can feel where they're being manipulated and
Yeah.
moved beyond their will, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's almost like the weaponization of all these signals, really.
Absolutely.
G, I was going to say, oh, G, that's one G. Then there's a 2G, that will be GG. And anyway, I know
Okay.
people who listening to this, they know exactly what we're talking about, but there's a subtle way to do this, right? And it's not by fighting, it's to
No.
not give it any energy,
No.
right? And to use your energy to reconstruct a more positive world, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's what they want. They want us to attach to the energy, and what they can't stand is when they pay no attention to it. We just take actions based upon the impulses that are coming from our intuition and not from anything outside of ourselves. Having said that, also understanding that we need to chat with people who are on the same wavelength as us, because we might be getting it wrong, mate. Right?
Of course.
Do you
Of
see what I
course.
mean? So
Yeah.
where two or more are gathered, you get a bit of a better picture.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. Just before I let you go, just like to touch on that last point. I feel like a lot of these spiritual communities that we've all been part of had become an echo chamber, and there had to be something happen to like, you know, make a shift in them. And really, we were talking about it before. A lot of these things like had to like explode out and everybody go in their different ways, because they became like a complete echo chamber. It was just like yes men and yes women and everyone like seeing it in the same way, and there wasn't a lot of like this where you get like, I suppose in medical or scientific terms, you get like peer review. There's not a lot of this peer review. It's just like, yeah, this is the way it is, and everyone agrees. And then if someone didn't disagreed, maybe they would just disappear or something. They would just go, and you don't have this feedback. You just get this constant affirmation of what you believe is true, and then everyone agrees, and so then it becomes true and it's right. You've got it. So yeah, that's a good point. So I
Very,
know.
very important, that, mate. Sorry to put in, but I
Sure.
believe in collective individuality. We're
Mm,
all unique. Nobody's special. There's a lot of special people out there, but no one's special. But we are unique. We
yes.
all resonate at our individual, unique soul's vibration. I know that. With that will come specific skills and talents and gifts, right? That when we express them, the stuff that we won't be able to do, but somebody else in the group will be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it all locks in. And I see this like dodecahedral thing. I think that the heart, right, and the 12 cranial nerves, right, I think they're connected. And if you're a religious person, like a Christian, you could say that maybe like Jesus and the 12 disciples, right? Both masculine and feminine, by the way,
Yeah.
right? Just have to get that in there, not causing trouble. So each of those cranial nerves mostly affect the way you hold your face, believe it or not, right? And the way you frown will direct the signals, or the way you smile will direct the signals appropriate when they're needed. It's fascinating. This is what I'm getting shown all the time, and I have to say, slow down with it. It's like too much for me. But I'm sort of being shown now is to try and show the neuroscience, right, of how we can go forward, really, you know. So
Cool.
it's fascinating. It's exciting. Some days I wake up, Martin, and I'm bored shitless with it all, and I say to me heart, "Take me now, because I've had enough." And that's the truth of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when I'm physically tired, and I think, "Oh, fucking just take me now. I've had enough," But I have to have a word with myself, right? And here's the good thing that I've got: something inside of me asks me, "Have you had a drink today?" And I smile, "No, I haven't." And that's the promise I've got, mate. If I keep close to my intuition and I haven't had a drink today, it's far better than it used to be. Right.
Wow. 33, a special number as well.
Okay. So
33
there you
years.
go, mate.
Beautiful. Brother, thank you so much. It's been amazing. Can't believe an hour and a half has passed, of course. I'm sure we will do this again. I want to thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your colloquialisms. I love them as always. And yeah, it's beautiful to get this like really diverse conversation. We went so many places. Like it's beautiful. I just appreciate you, appreciate this everyone for joining. Thank you, and
Thanks for asking me, mate.
yeah,
And thanks
it's a
everybody.
pleasure.
And if you've upset anybody, just take a step back and look look at why you got upset. And don't blame me, right?
Anything you want
Well,
to leave us with? Last
I
word.
just say that I just like to say that what I've learned is more than anything else is right. The most simplest way to know if you're on the right track is just become aware of your breathing. That's it. And if it's open and flowing, just allow it to go. Just keep going, right? And if not, take a step back. Ask your heart, what are you trying to show me?
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
God bless, mate. Thanks very
Love you,
much. Nice to
brother.
see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Speak soon.
See you soon.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.